Ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you a question that could change the way you live your life from this moment on. Are you spending your days chasing treasures that will vanish, or are you storing up rewards that will last for eternity? You can have a house full of possessions, a bank account stacked with wealth, and a name celebrated by the crowd. But the second you take your last breath, none of it goes with you. The only thing that follows you is what you invested in heaven. So the real question today is not, what are you building here? But what are you sending ahead there? We live in a world that constantly shouts at us to measure our lives by what we can touch, what we can see, and what we can accumulate. From the moment we wake up, advertisements, social media, and even people around us tell us that our value is determined by how much money we make, how big our house is, how many people know our name, or how many achievements we can stack up on a shelf. The culture pushes us to believe that if we don't look successful here on earth, then we aren't successful at all. But when you step back and compare the short span of this life to eternity, you begin to realize how small, fragile, and temporary earthly success really is. Everything we can build in this world is tied to time, and time eventually runs out. Think about it. That house you've spent years decorating will one day be passed down, sold, or destroyed. That bank account you've poured your energy into growing can evaporate in a bad economy or be left behind the moment you take your last breath. The applause you worked so hard for disappears the second the crowd turns its attention to the next person. Fame is fleeting, fortune is unstable, and possessions are fragile. You can spend your whole life storing up treasures here, but the reality is you can't take any of it with you when you leave this earth. The moment you die, all of it stays behind. This is why Jesus in Matthew 6 tells us not to lay up treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal. He is giving us a clear reminder that everything physical has a built-in expiration date. It doesn't matter how carefully you guard it, how much you protect it, or how long you hold on to it. Eventually it will fade. But in that same passage, he says to store up treasures in heaven where moth and rust cannot destroy and where thieves cannot break in. In other words, there is a type of treasure that outlasts time, outlasts death, and outlasts this world. That's the treasure you should be living for. When you understand this, it changes the way you view life. You begin to realize that real success isn't defined by how much you collect in the here and now, but by how much you send ahead into eternity. The world says the one with the most toys wins, but God says the one with the most eternal fruit is the one who wins. Everything you do for him, everything you invest into his kingdom, everything you sacrifice for his glory, it all stacks up as treasure that cannot be lost. Picture it this way. Imagine two people. The first one spends his entire life working long hours, climbing the corporate ladder and accumulating wealth. He's admired, respected, and envied. But at the end of his life, he dies and all he has is left behind. He steps into eternity empty-handed. The second person doesn't live in luxury, doesn't have his name in lights, and doesn't have a long list of earthly achievements, but he spends his life serving God, giving generously, loving others, and obeying faithfully. He dies without earthly riches, but he steps into eternity with a treasure chest full of heavenly rewards that will never fade. Who really won? The one who lived for something eternal. This doesn't mean that money, possessions, or recognition are evil. It means they are temporary. They are tools, not treasures. God may bless you with resources, but those resources are never the ultimate goal. They are simply the means to honor him and invest in things that outlast you. If you make earthly success your God, you'll end up empty. If you make heavenly rewards your goal, you'll end up full. One of the greatest deceptions the enemy uses is to distract us with temporary things so that we miss eternal opportunities. He doesn't have to get you to worship him. All he has to do is get you to worship stuff. If he can convince you to chase the dollar, the spotlight, the applause, the possessions, then you will spend your life storing up things that don't matter. And when your time is up, you'll realize that you invested everything into what you couldn't keep. But when you live with heaven in mind, you begin to use your time differently. You ask yourself questions like, what am I doing today that will still matter 10,000 years from now? How am I using my gifts, my money, my influence to advance God's kingdom? Am I living to be remembered on earth, or am I living to be rewarded in heaven? These questions force you to step out of the rat race of earthly success and step into the eternal race that actually counts. The Bible reminds us again and again that our lives are like a vapor, here today, gone tomorrow. You don't know how many years you have left. Every day you live is one less day you have to prepare for eternity. That should shake you up. That should wake you up, because if you live only for the here and now, you will have nothing waiting for you there. But if you live with eternity in mind, then every act of obedience, every moment of faithfulness, every sacrifice you make becomes an investment that heaven records. So ask yourself, what are you building your life around? Are you chasing temporary applause or eternal approval? Are you storing up treasures that will fade, or treasures that will last? Are you living for the opinion of people who will forget you, or for the voice of the one who will one day say, well done, good and faithful servant? Real success is not what you accumulate in the bank. Real success is not what people applaud on social media. Real success is not how impressive your resume looks. Real success is measured in eternity. It's measured by the souls you impact, the obedience you walk in, the generosity you give, the faith you hold, and the sacrifices you make for the sake of Christ. Because the only thing that will last forever is what you send ahead into heaven. Down here on earth, reward systems are flawed. People recognize what they can see, what looks impressive, what shines in public. They applaud the visible, the loud, and the celebrated. They often overlook the quiet faithfulness, the behind-the-scenes obedience, the sacrificial service that no one else notices. That's because human recognition is shallow. It focuses on what's in front of the eyes. But heaven operates by a different standard. Heaven's record-keeping system is flawless, and heaven's reward system cannot be manipulated. You may feel like your work goes unnoticed. Maybe you're a mother who has spent years pouring into your children, teaching them values, loving them, and praying for them, and no one outside your home has ever given you an award. Or perhaps you've been faithful in your church, showing up early, serving in ways that no one claps for, doing the hard and thankless jobs, and you've wondered, does anyone even see this? Or maybe you've stood for your convictions at work, choosing integrity over compromise, and while others were promoted, you were passed over because you wouldn't play by the world's rules. From an earthly perspective, it looks like you lost. But in heaven's economy, you've gained. Every act of obedience is recorded. Every prayer you whisper when no one hears is written down. Every dollar you give sacrificially, even when you could have used it for yourself, is noted in heaven's books. Every time you choose to forgive when it would have been easier to stay bitter. Every time you speak truth when it would have been simpler to stay silent. Every time you stand for righteousness when it costs you something, God sees it all. He misses nothing. While people may pass over you, heaven never forgets you. The Bible makes this clear again and again. In Hebrews 6:10, it says, God is not unjust. He will not forget your work and the love you have shown him as you have helped his people and continue to help them. That means God keeps perfect records. He does not miss one moment of your faithfulness. He does not overlook one act of service. He does not ignore one sacrifice you make in his name. Even if the world turns its back, even if no one claps, even if no one ever says thank you, heaven has it on file and heaven will reward it. The challenge many of us face is that we want instant recognition. We want applause now. We want the promotion now. We want to see the fruit immediately. But God's reward system is often delayed because he doesn't measure by time. He measures by eternity. Just because you don't see the return today doesn't mean it's not coming. Think of a farmer planting seeds. He doesn't expect the harvest overnight. He waters, he waits, he tends to the soil because he knows that eventually in due season, what he planted will grow. In the same way, your faithfulness, your obedience, your sacrifice, they may not produce instant results, but they will produce eternal rewards. Jesus himself gave this promise in Matthew 10:42 when he said, if anyone gives even a cup of cold water to one of these little ones who is my disciple, truly I tell you that person will certainly not lose their reward. Did you catch that? Even something as small as handing a cup of water in his name is not forgotten. That means nothing is too insignificant for heaven to notice. God's reward system doesn't just honor the big dramatic sacrifices. It also honors the small, consistent acts of obedience that no one else sees. Here's the reality. You may not be rewarded here because the world doesn't value what heaven values. The world celebrates fame, fortune, and power. Heaven celebrates faith, humility, and obedience. The world crowns champions for their talent. Heaven crowns servants for their faithfulness. The world measures success by how high you climb. Heaven measures it by how low you're willing to kneel. That's why you can't get discouraged when people don't recognize you. Their recognition was never the point. The point is to live for the reward that comes from God alone. And when God rewards, he does it on a level that far exceeds anything people could give you. The world's applause fades. Heaven's reward endures forever. The world's trophies gather dust. Heaven's crowns shine for eternity. The world's promotions end with retirement or death. Heaven's rewards never end. That's why Paul says in 1 Corinthians 15:58, therefore, my dear brothers and sisters, stand firm. Let nothing move you. Always give yourselves fully to the work of the Lord, because you know that your labor in the Lord is not in vain. Your labor is never wasted because God has already attached eternal significance to it. Think of those who lived their lives with this perspective. Missionaries who left everything behind to serve God in foreign lands. Preachers who faithfully proclaimed the truth even when they were rejected. Believers who quietly prayed, gave, served, and sacrificed with no spotlight and no earthly reward. On earth, their lives might have looked unimpressive to the world, but in heaven, their accounts are overflowing, because heaven values what lasts, not what looks good in the moment. This should encourage you to keep going when you feel like giving up, to stay faithful when you feel forgotten, to keep serving when no one claps, to keep praying when no one notices, to keep obeying when no one else understands. Because God sees, God records, God remembers, and God rewards. His system is perfect and his timing is precise. When the day comes, he will repay you in ways that make every sacrifice worth it. But it should also challenge you, because while God remembers everything, he also knows the motives of the heart. You can fool people with fake humility or outward appearances, but you cannot fool God. He not only records what you do, he records why you did it. If you served just to be seen, if you gave just to be applauded, if you obeyed just for recognition, then you've already received your reward here on earth. But if you did it out of love for him, even if no one else noticed, then your reward is waiting for you in eternity. So the question becomes, whose reward are you living for? The fading applause of people or the eternal approval of God? Are you chasing recognition now, or are you content to wait for heaven to honor you forever? Because the truth is, you cannot live for both. You either live for the crowd or you live for the king. And the king's reward system is the only one that will matter when this life is over. When you begin to see life through the lens of eternity, everything about the way you live here and now begins to shift. Perspective has power. The way you see something shapes the way you respond to it. If all you see is the here and now, you will spend your days chasing comfort, convenience, and applause. But if you see beyond the temporary, if you live with eternity in mind, suddenly your decisions, your values, your priorities, and your passions come into alignment with a greater purpose. The problem many people face is that they live as if this life is all there is. They act as though the years on this earth are the full story, but your time here is just the opening chapter in an endless book. It stretches far beyond the span of years you are given on earth. And once you recognize that truth, you stop wasting energy on things that don't matter and start investing in things that will never die. Living with an eternal perspective helps you filter your choices. Before you respond to temptation, you ask yourself, is this worth my eternal reward? Before you compromise your values for a quick gain, you ask, is this worth losing treasure in heaven? Before you allow bitterness, greed, or pride to control you, you ask, is this how I want to be remembered before the throne of God? That eternal lens reframes the momentary pressures of life and gives you strength to live differently. Take the example of Moses. Hebrews 11 tells us that he chose to suffer with the people of God rather than enjoy the fleeting pleasures of sin, because he was looking ahead to his reward. Moses understood something many of us miss. Sin might bring temporary pleasure, but it has no eternal value. It can satisfy in the moment, but it robs you of what could be yours forever. Moses traded comfort in Pharaoh's palace for the eternal inheritance of obedience. And that decision not only changed his life, but impacted generations. That's what happens when you live with eternity in mind. Your decisions ripple beyond your own lifetime. Eternal perspective also reshapes the way you handle suffering. If you only see life through the lens of earth, pain feels pointless, loss feels devastating, and trials feel unbearable. But when you see through the lens of heaven, you realize that suffering here is temporary and that it produces glory there. Paul reminds us in 2 Corinthians 4:17 that our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all. Notice what he says. The trouble is temporary, but the reward is eternal. The pain you endure now is not waste. Sure, it is producing something in eternity that far outweighs what you can see right now. This is why people who live with eternity in mind don't give up easily. They don't throw in the towel just because life gets hard. They keep pressing on because they know there is more at stake than just what happens in this lifetime. Eternal vision gives you endurance. It makes you strong in the face of trials because you know this life is not the finish line. It's just the training ground for what's coming. Another change that comes when you live with eternal perspective is that your priorities shift. Suddenly, your calendar looks different. Your money is spent differently. Your relationships are valued differently. You no longer invest just in things that will fade away. You invest in things that will outlast you. You pour into people. You plant seeds of faith. You invest in the kingdom of God. Because you know that when this life is over, the only things that matter are the souls you touched, the obedience you walked in, and the glory you gave to God. Living with heaven in mind also keeps you from being distracted by what others think. Too many people live paralyzed by the opinions of others. They change who they are, what they do, and how they live just to please the crowd. But when your eyes are fixed on eternity, you stop bowing to the crowd and start bowing only to the King. The opinion of man loses its grip on you because you realize that man's applause lasts for a moment, but God's approval lasts forever. That's why Paul says in Galatians 1:10, am I now trying to win the approval of human beings or of God? If I were still trying to please people, I would not be a servant of Christ. Eternal vision frees you from the trap of people pleasing. It also ignites urgency in your heart. When you live with heaven in mind, you realize that time is short. You don't have endless years to waste. Every day is a gift and every opportunity is a chance to invest in eternity. You begin to live with passion, with focus, with drive. You stop procrastinating on the things God has called you to do. You stop delaying obedience. You stop treating life as if tomorrow is guaranteed because you know that eternity could begin for you at any moment. That urgency pushes you to step into your calling, to use your gifts, to serve with energy, to love deeply, and to reach as many people as you can with the message of hope. When eternity becomes real to you, even your definition of success changes. You stop asking, how much did I make? And start asking, how much did I give? You stop asking, how many people know my name? And start asking, how many lives were changed because of mine? You stop asking, how comfortable am I? And start asking, how obedient am I? Because success in God's kingdom is never measured by the same yardstick the world uses. Success is faithfulness. Success is obedience. Success is storing up rewards in heaven that no one can take away. This perspective isn't just theory. It has practical implications for your daily life. It determines how you treat people, how you make decisions, how you use your resources, and how you respond when life doesn't go your way. It shapes your marriage, your parenting, your career, your friendships, because if you believe eternity is real, then everything you do here matters more than you thought. Every choice is either an investment in eternity or a withdrawal from it. So each morning when you wake up, eternity should frame your day. You should ask yourself, how will I use today to store up treasure in heaven? Who can I serve? Who can I forgive? Who can I love? Where can I give? How can I honor God? These questions keep you aligned with heaven's perspective and prevent you from wasting your days on things that won't last. When eternity is your focus, your life takes on purpose and meaning. You stop drifting and you start running your race with intentionality. You stop being distracted by what doesn't matter and you start giving yourself fully to what does. And one day when you stand before the throne of God, you'll see that every choice you made with eternity in mind was worth it. The sacrifices will make sense. The struggles will be worth it. The obedience will be rewarded. There are moments in life when you give, when you serve, when you sacrifice, and it feels like nobody notices. You pour yourself out, but no one says thank you. You do the right thing, but it costs you more than you expected. You keep showing up, but you wonder if it's even making a difference. Deep down, a quiet question starts to rise. Is it really worth it? That's where God's word steps in with a resounding answer. Yes, your labor in the Lord is never in vain. The reason many people feel discouraged is because they expect to see immediate results. We live in a culture of instant gratification, instant meals, instant downloads, instant recognition. But God doesn't always work on our timeline. He is not in a rush. He is more concerned with eternal outcomes than momentary applause. That means you may not see the fruit of your labor right away, but just because you can't see it doesn't mean it isn't growing. Just because it hasn't blossomed yet doesn't mean the seed isn't alive. Consider the farmer who plants in the spring. He waters, he waits, and for weeks he may not see anything breaking through the soil. But beneath the surface, life is happening. Roots are spreading, growth is taking place, and in due season, the harvest comes. In the same way, your obedience may look invisible, but in the unseen realm, something is happening. Heaven is recording it. God is honoring it. And one day you will see the reward. Paul understood this truth when he wrote in 1 Corinthians 15:58, "Therefore, my dear brothers and sisters, stand firm. Let nothing move you. Always give yourselves fully to the work of the Lord, because you know your labor in the Lord is not in vain." That verse is both encouragement and instruction. It tells you not to quit, not to back down, not to slow your pace, because God has already guaranteed that your work will never be wasted. Even if no one else values it, God does. This should give you hope when you're tired. Maybe you've prayed for years for a family member to turn to Christ, and it feels like nothing is changing. Maybe you've been faithful in ministry, but the numbers don't look like you imagined. Maybe you've given generously, and it feels like you have less instead of more. Maybe you've stood for truth, but it brought criticism instead of celebration. In those moments, you have to remind yourself that God's economy is different from man's. What looks like loss here is actually gain there. What looks like obscurity here is honored there. What looks like wasted energy here is rewarded there. Think about Jesus' words in Matthew 25 when he spoke about the servants who invested their master's talents. The ones who were faithful, even with little, were told, "Well done, good and faithful servant." That phrase is not just a pat on the back. It's the highest reward anyone could ever receive. To hear the King of the universe look at you and declare that you did well, that you were faithful, that your work mattered, is worth more than any amount of applause this world could ever give. That moment will make every sacrifice worth it. Sometimes the greatest rewards come from the smallest acts of faithfulness. You may never stand on a stage, but your prayers may hold up someone who does. You may never be in the spotlight, but your generosity may fund the work that reaches thousands. You may never have your name remembered by history, but heaven will remember every act of obedience you offered. In God's kingdom, there is no such thing as wasted service. He takes note of every detail. As Hebrews 6:10 declares, God is not unjust. He will not forget your work and the love you have shown him. If God doesn't forget, then you can be sure it is never in vain. This truth also reframes how we handle discouragement. It's easy to quit when we don't see progress. It's easy to slow down when it feels like no one notices. But if you know your labor is never wasted, you can press on with confidence. You can keep teaching that class, keep loving that difficult person, keep serving in that hidden place, because you know that even if no one on earth applauds, heaven has already recorded it. It also protects us from the trap of comparison. Too often we look at what others are doing and think, they're accomplishing more than me, they're being recognized, they're making a bigger impact. But God doesn't measure success by comparison. He measures it by faithfulness. Your labor in him is judged not by how it looks next to someone else's, but by whether you did what he called you to do. That means if your assignment was small in the eyes of man, but you were faithful, you will be rewarded just as much as someone who had a larger, more visible assignment. Living with this truth also gives you strength in seasons of waiting. Sometimes the harvest doesn't come quickly. Sometimes the reward isn't seen until years later. But Galatians 6:9 reminds us, let us not become weary in doing good, For at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. Did you notice those words? At the proper time. That means the harvest is guaranteed, but the timing is God's. Your role is not to control the timing, but to stay faithful until it comes. And when that day comes, when you finally stand before God, you will realize that nothing you did for him was wasted. Not one tear you shed in prayer, not one sacrifice you made for his kingdom, not 1 hour you spent serving others, not one step of faith you took when it was difficult. All of it will echo in eternity. All of it will be rewarded beyond measure. And in that moment, the trials will see him small compared to the joy of his approval. This is why you can't afford to let discouragement stop you. This is why you must not give up when it gets hard. This is why you must keep pressing, keep praying, keep giving, keep serving, keep obeying, because you are not working for nothing. You are working for eternal reward. Every act of obedience is an investment in heaven's economy, and heaven's economy never collapses. The world's rewards fade, but God's rewards endure forever. So whatever you're facing, however tired you may be, however unnoticed you may feel, don't stop. Don't give in. Don't let the enemy whisper lies that your work doesn't matter. Your work matters more than you know. Your labor is seen. Your labor is recorded. Your labor will be rewarded. And when you step into eternity, you'll discover that every sacrifice was not only worth it, it was building for you a treasure that can never be taken away.